Thank you so much, Kayla, to agreeing to this interview and speaking with the B Foundation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm like really excited to interview with you guys. I love everything that you guys stand for. I had a chance to go over your website and your Instagram page. You guys are doing some amazing work. I really appreciate and thank you guys for seeing my page and deciding like I connected so much with your brand. Thank you.
No problem. When I was looking through just teachers on Instagram, and I just saw your page, and I just see you like as a blossoming teacher, and just sharing your platform and sharing your journey. So I just thought you would be just the perfect fit for it.
Thank you.
So let's start off with a basic question. What motivated you to become a teacher?
What motivated me to become a teacher, it's kind of funny. I love to tell the story because it kind of fell into my lap. I remember following going into high school and we had like a choice program. We had several programs in high school. And my auntie was like, you have two choices. You could do nursing or you could do teaching. And I'm like, I'm going to do teaching because I just didn't want to become a nurse. But eventually, as the years passed by, I fell in love with teaching, seeing how much an impact you can make on students' lives and how much the little things you do in class can lead to big things that they do later on in life. I just fall in love seeing kids grasp that concept that you've been working so hard to teach them and then using it later on. So it kind of fell into my lap and I molded myself to really just fall in love with it. And, I've been working on my teaching degree and finally now have it for over 10 years now because I started earning my degree 2014 and now here I am a second year teacher in 2024. So being able to work with students and see them growth is like really what motivated me to get into this position because I always like to say like a teacher's job helps everybody else's job. So without a teacher you couldn't do we couldn't do what any like we couldn't have doctors, we couldn't have lawyers. You need a teacher in your life. So I just love being that one person in students' lives.
How do you handle classroom management and discipline?
I handle classroom management and discipline as a lover, but with stern and standards. I believe that kids need routine and structure to be able to prosper in life. So I basically hold my kids to a level of standard, and it's that and only that. Of course, we all make mistakes, and we always sometimes don't meet that standard, and sometimes that's okay. And I'll constantly remind my students, like, "Hey, we didn't meet that expectation. Let's work on it. What were some difficulties that you couldn't meet that expectation? How can I help you?" As far as like discipline, my kids know I like to do like a really three strike system. First strike, me and you have a talk, we sit down, how can I help you? Second strike is obviously removal from like said activity. And then we have another talk. And then the last strike is me, if it's really egregious, having to remove you from the classroom entirely and a phone call home or probably a meeting with parents. And throughout this whole process, I always talk to students. Students have to be aware of what they did, and I have to be aware why they do it. Some students aren't willing to tell me why, but I still sit with them and talk with them and discuss like, hey, these are our rules, these are our standards, these are our procedures. You have to follow them. If you don't do this, X, Y, and Z will happen. And in my classroom, I kind of like to do a I don't really call it class rules, I call it a class promise because we all promise to follow these rules and I myself have to follow them and we sign them every year. So I always like to refer back, hey, you signed this class promise, you promised that you will do this. And I know sometimes we falter, but we have to be on the ball and the money to do this. A lot of people do not like my style of discipline because I seem to be a little bit mean or a little bit rough around the edges. But it's because I believe like once you hold kids to that standard, they will always meet them. And you can't lower your standards just because they're young. Kids are very moldable and malleable and they can do such great things. So I don't like to sell my kids short. I like to really push them to the limits and expectation. And of course, if there's something that doesn't work for my students or that classroom, I remove it or tweak it for them to work, but I never lower the standards.
How do you engage students who are struggling or disinterested in subjects or just classroom lessons?
So that's kind of like really hard. I know a lot of teachers really struggle with that, especially with this generation coming up with being more in tune to the internet and technology. I try my best to integrate things that they like. So getting to know my students, learning what's popping out there in social media. So try my best to be well connected with students. Sometimes it always isn't going to work where I can't integrate some of their interests. So I try to like have a very upbeat and bubbly personality. Not every teacher can do that, but I literally like to call myself a ray of sunshine because I'm literally at 100 every day, every morning, no matter what. So with that, my students really get interested. I do like to do a lot of moving activities, so they're not always constantly sitting down. When it comes to like interest, it's really hit or miss with some kids. Some students really are interested no matter what you do. So you really just have to meet them where it stands. So getting into like small groups and taking it out of like the whole group setting is where I can really meet my students a lot closer and engage them better, because a lot of students really don't work well being in the big group. So when I take them apart and meet them with them small group or even one-on-one, I pique their interest a little bit more and their interest comes back and we get better engagement. But as far as like engagement, I try to have my attitude at 100, integrate movement, some like really fun activities. For me, learning always doesn't have to be pencil and paper or sitting and watching me yap all over again, because I definitely love talking a lot, but sometimes I have to let my students be the teachers and be leaders. So I've learned in this past year that letting them lead and letting them lead the focus of teaching, or letting them be hands-on and student-centered, it definitely goes the mile.
So when you first began teaching, did you have like a preference of what age group that you wanted to teach, or was it something that you're naturally just going through and just seeing what happens?
I really don't have a preference. I like to believe that I can teach any grade. But I have a lot of experience with early education and grades stopping at third grade. So when I had got the opportunity to teach last year, my options were first or second, and I took first grade, which I absolutely love the firsties. People like to say that's kind of like a little bit of a sweet spot because they're still kind of little babies and still kind of like learning how to be people, but they're still like learning themselves and becoming independent, learning their likes. And so I love to be in that spot with those children, because I get to help them become themselves and become the little people when they go off to second and third grade. So that's my sweet spot.
Okay. Do you ever have something that you wish that would be able to change, at least in teaching environment or schools, or just more freedom? Just anything you feel like.
I think definitely more freedom. I think that teaching has now become so rigid to the point that teachers are scared to really teach anymore because of a lot of the parent complaints that's been happening lately. And I'm all for parents being part of the classroom. I think we are a village, we are a community. I can't do the things that I can do in the classroom without parents. But I think where it's starting to teeter a little bit is the massive parent complaints. I've seen complaints of like over the smallest of things, and it's not just here in America, it's in overseas. I recently saw a video about South Korea having issues with parent complaints over the littlest of things. So I think teachers are now scared to really do their jobs because they're scared a student's going to go home and a parent might not like what they're teaching in the classroom, which is understandable. But now it's being held to a point where your license is at stake, and now you are, I'm sorry. And now she's like digging through a bag, and I'm like, that's so annoying. But now it's not only that your job might be at stake, your livelihood's at stake, your teaching license is at stake. And it's a very scary situation. I know the biggest thing here in Florida currently is our classroom libraries. And we are technically not allowed to have classroom libraries that are not fully scanned and approved on a list. And there are plenty of books that are now being banned that as a Black woman teacher, that's baffling. Like, so it's a very scared moment in teaching right now, because you want to come in and do your job and be this creative teacher and bring all these things in and make sure you're being inclusive, but now you really can't be too inclusive because somebody might feel a certain type of way, as they should. That is their opinion. But when it starts going into the position where it might affect my life and somebody else, it's a very scary situation. So that's just my fear right now.
As a Black woman in teaching, do you feel like there's any neglection, at least for your journey as becoming a teacher, or
Um,
any adversaries you might have faced?
I think the hardest thing when I was coming up as a baby teacher, and me now still being a baby teacher, really didn't have a lot of positive reflections as a Black woman teacher. I think in all my years of being in school myself as a student, I think I had one positive role model as a Black teacher, and it's really kind of hard. So getting into this journey, it's kind of hard to like find people you see yourself in and connect with those, because these are your coworkers, these are the people you see over 200 days a year. And some people might not get the mannerisms and the way you speak and the way you talk, because a majority of teachers do happen to be Caucasian, and then they don't understand the level of background. So they're teaching minority students who are in a level of poverty, but they have never experienced that themselves. So it's kind of hard. They don't understand what you do or how you talk or why you do the certain things. So it's definitely kind of like saddening in the fact like, oh, should I say this or should I do the things I do? I know for my student teaching, I was on a team with all white women, and now they're an amazing group of women. I couldn't be where I am without them, but a lot of the things, how I connected with my students, they didn't understand because, of course, they're not Black or they're not Hispanic or they don't understand how things run, and that's perfectly okay. So I think for other teachers, you just have to find yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I made my Instagram page, because I wanted to find teachers that looked like me and that were doing things like me. I know one of my favorite teachers that I follow, that it's a Black woman. I think her name is Kinder Kindness on Instagram. She is a wonderful representation of being a Black woman in education. And I think that's like the hardest thing. You just have to find someone who looks like you, whether you're white, Black, Hispanic, Asian, and see what they're doing and really know that you're not the only one. Currently, I'm thankful. I'm currently on an all Black women team next year. So I'm really excited because I know I'm going to be able to have these connections and nuances that I wouldn't be able to have as last year, as I had before.
I would love if you guys are open just to have like a group interview, if you guys are open to it, just to speak on the platform as well, if you guys
Oh
want to share your
yes, of
story.
course. I'm gonna speak to them. I don't think we see each other until a couple weeks from now, but I'll definitely reach out to see if they would love to do a group interview, because we definitely all come from different backgrounds. I think I'm the youngest on the team, so I'm coming in as a little baby teacher, and they're taking me under their wing. So I'll definitely reach out and see what they say.
Okay. I was going to ask a question on why did you start your Instagram? So, but you already answered it with your previous question. But
Yes.
do you feel like you just sharing your teaching journey on Instagram has helped you in a sense, or helped your outreach, and as teachers reached out to you when doing it as well?
I definitely think it's helped my outreach, and it's not only helped my outreach with reaching people, because I not only made it to find other people that look like me, I made it to show people like you're not alone. Like everything that you're going through in teaching is exactly what some of us are going through right now, so that you're not alone. There's people that's going through the same thing, and it's helped me connect with other people that I don't think I would have ever connected with before. And I'm able to speak on platforms like with you guys in the B organization. So it's helped me not only build my self-confidence in knowing like this is where I'm supposed to be doing, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's helped me gain some classroom materials for my classroom. Recently, I was partnered with Clever Headphones, and they donated a classroom set of headphones for us. So it's definitely kind of like a whirlwind. Like you see influencers get these brand deals and these things, and you're like, oh, I could never do that. But now it's happening to me, and it's not just happening for me. It's happening for my students, because everything that I do is for them. All the pretty little pictures, all the cute little designs, and all the projects, it's for them. And seeing my Instagram take it that far is definitely like so amazing, because any like money I hope to make in the future goes to them, because this is what I want to do. As much as I love being like a little influencer, at the end of the day, I do it for my students. So I definitely am in love with this journey, and I'm so glad that I've been put on this platform to be able to share these things. And it's just opened so many doors for me and my students. I don't post them on my page. They're like, they know about the page. They're like always like, why can I be? And I'm like, no, just know you get to enjoy the things outside of it. So it's definitely a blessing in disguise. It's hard work, but I genuinely love what I do.
Have you faced any issues when sharing your journey on social platforms, Instagram, maybe mean comments or anything?
I haven't gotten any mean comments yet. I believe my family and myself are my biggest critics. I always run every post I make through my boyfriend, which I like to call my manager. He goes through everything. So before I ever post anything, he sees it and he's always like, that doesn't look so good. You need to re-record that. So if I could get through him, I could get through anything. I haven't gotten any like backlash from anything or any rude comments. I know that that's the catalyst with being an influencer, that you open yourself up to everybody's opinions. I just remind myself that, everybody has the right to their opinions and to feel as way they do. And sometimes I need criticism to help me become a better person. I think I learned very early on in my journey that I didn't want to share my students. I had one post up that had their voices in the background, and I had watched and I read an article and watched a video saying that, students did not agree to that, even if it's just their voices. So I learned very quickly, I don't want to do that. I want my students to have the ability and freedom to choose. And because they're so young, that's their parents' decision to be able to allow them to be posted. So I don't post any part of my students at all, because that's their preference. And I don't want to ever take anybody's freedom of choice away. So I don't do that. So I try to be as creative as possible without posting my students' faces. I know a lot of influencers do it, but personally, it's not for me. And I don't want that kind of backlash. Parents do see my Instagram. The only time I ever post students is on our classroom community communication apps, and parents sign off their approval for that. But my Instagram is a no-go.
Okay. How do you stay authentic and true to your teaching values while building social media?
I try to remind myself, like, whatever I see online is not me. As much as I like want to manifest and dream that I would be at those standards, I have to remember what I'm doing and what my mission is that for me to make money, it's for me and my students to put ourselves out there and show other teachers like what you're going through is just as much as what we're going through. So I have to remind myself whatever I see on Instagram might not be reality. And that's for everybody, all types of influencers, not only teacher influencers, that sometimes social media is very fake. And I have to remind myself that all the time. Like, I'm seeing these classroom transformations and all this, and I'm like, it might be fake and that's okay. And it might be genuine and that's okay. It's just what I can do is what I can do. And whatever somebody else does is what they do. I always like to say, whatever, as long as their ship doesn't sink mine, I'm okay. And I just have to remember the path and journey that I've been put on and not look at anybody and be like, oh, I want that and take it for face value, because I don't know the story behind what it took them to do that. I don't know the story behind of how long it took them to build that. And I think that's the biggest thing in social media that I had to learn the hard way, is that, oh, I'm only getting 800 views on my Instagram. Oh, I'm only getting 800 views on this TikTok. Had to remind myself, if 100 people came up to you on the street today and said, you're beautiful, wouldn't you think you're beautiful? And I'm like, exactly. 100 is a lot of people, and that's okay, because the people took years to build their platform. For me, it's probably going to take the same amount, and that's okay, because I didn't join for the likes and the followers. That's a plus. I just joined to share my journey.
Um, so have you really ever really connected to a student, or like just had a very aspiring moment that has stuck with you? I'm right now. I know you're new to teaching and everything, but have you ever had that like just moment be like, I am happy I'm here.
Oh,
This is my moment.
absolutely. I think I had that moment with my students last year, believe it or not. Um, Being a first year teacher, it's definitely the scariest thing in the door, in the scariest thing in the world, because once they close that door, you realize, wow, they really left me here by myself. Like, they believe in me. Like, oh, and I think I connected and bonded with my students so much to the point, like, they thought of me as like part of them. Like, if I weren't coming to school, they'd be like, why? Where are you going? Who are you going with? What time are you coming back? So building that bond with my students really made me understand, like, I'm making an impact. I talk about my students all the time. I like to call them my kids, to the point my mom was like, you don't have any kids? I'm like, yes, I do. I got 22 kids right now, and I'll name them all. So it's like, I think what's really important for me in the classroom is building a classroom family. And I started that really early on. So we became this little family, and I genuinely adore every single one of them. As many times they get on my nerves or somebody's not listening, I'm just like, wow, look at you. Like, I love you. And like, somebody will tell me about my students, like, oh, Miss Dorfeuille, so-and-so did this. I'm like, that's my student. So I genuinely love and adore all my students. I was blessed to have those students in my life, and I was meant to be in that place. I think the best memory that I had with them is when I did my book exchange for Christmas, and seeing their faces on getting these books for me and us taking pictures and hugging. I'm just like, wow, I love every single one of you. And I just know that you love me. It brings me to tears knowing I won't be them with them next year. But I adore them. Like,
It does sound like you just really enjoy teaching, and it's just like it's in your heart, which is fantastic to see as a fellow Black woman. I never really had teachers I connected with. So with you being there, I think it's like it's good. It's good to see people of color out there teaching people of color.
thank you. I definitely, I know I'm in the place I'm meant to be. Being able to connect with my students, I absolutely adore. And I be so childish with them that sometimes you have to bring yourself down to a kid level. And me and my kids, I'll never forget this one moment with my student. I mean, we like to do lunch and a movie on Fridays. So we're having lunch and a movie. I'm eating my lunch, I'm eating it real good. And he come up to me, Miss Dorfeuille, it's good, huh? And I'm like, it is good. It is good. He was like, yeah, you tearing it up. I'm like, mm. And
In
other
your
teachers,
business.
right. And some other people might take offense to that. I'm looking at him like, you all in my business. And ever since then, he'll come from lunch and he'll give me a snack. And he'll be like, Mr. Furley, I didn't see you eat it. Here's something from lunch. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, no, you eat it. I'm good. And he's like, no, you keep it. You keep it. Put it in the fridge. So it's just building those connections with students, whether they're a minority or not. It's a wonderful thing because they're so genuine in what they do, and they mean what they say and mean what they do because they haven't learned that consciousness yet. So it's grateful to see them doing such kind things. And you're like, wow, that's just you. That's just your heart. And I just love to see those things in them.
I know the new semester is coming up, new school year. So do you have any goals or expectations for it, or it's just like I'm going to experience in the class? I'm so nervous.
It's a little bit of both. Like, I'm like, it's a new school. I'm going to a new school next year, a whole new team. We're currently departmentalized, so I will only be teaching reading and social studies next year. So I'm kind of like very nervous about that because last year I was self-contained, meaning I taught all of them. So I'm kind of nervous just to teach one subject. But my goal next year is just to make sure all my students leave proficient as much as I can. My biggest goal is that students learn how to read. We're currently in like a reading crisis now here in the United States. And I think it's very important to know how to read. You can't do anything without learning how to read. So seeing if I can, as to the best of my abilities, to have almost all my students leave my classroom being proficient readers or on the path to being proficient readers is my absolute goal. I don't know what I got to do. I'm going to pray, but they're going to leave readers. And that's my absolute goal.
Do you have any last notes that you would like to leave for teachers like you just beginning or students who are starting their educational journey in
Is
teaching?
my last note to them is believe in yourself. It's never going to be easy. It's going to be hard, but it's worth it. It's worth the tears. It's worth the long nights. It's worth the 50-page lesson plans you only have to write in college because you don't write them in real life teaching. But it's worth it. The lives that you're going to change, the memories that you're going to make, it's worth it. And if you get into teaching and it's not for you, it's okay. There is more life outside of teaching if you get into it and you don't like it. I always tell people, if you don't love what you do, don't stick with it. But once you get in, it's going to be okay. And that's the words I really needed to hear myself because I was absolutely terrified. You're going to be okay. You got this. You got your degree, and it takes experience. You got it.